What I think you're going to want to look for next is Russell stocks. Those ones have lagged for honestly years, not months, years, and and there's a lot of reasons for that. Obviously, Rona messed everything up, right? Then supply chains got messed up that hurt a lot of those Russell companies more. Recently, obviously, that regional banking situation hurt the Russell in a substantial way because in the Russell, there was a lot of regional banks that were big weights in there. So if you're talking about the next leg higher in the market, it's going to come from, in my opinion, like the Russell area, if we're going to get that next leg higher. So that's just kind of my 2 cents there. And you'll see it in some other stocks that have kind of been beaten down. Something that comes to mind could even actually be some of the energy plays, maybe in the back half of the year. The tough thing for the bear case, to be quite frank, is many of the biggest weighting stocks, right, specifically in the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ, right, are NVIDIA, Amazon, Meta, stocks like that, right? And those stocks, you're going to see their net income skyrocket on a year-over-year basis throughout the next several quarters. So that's a little tough. Apple's I think, an iffy place. Microsoft continues to put up great numbers. Yeah, the valuation's a little rich, but that's Microsoft at the end of the day. And so that's a tough thing, in my opinion, for the bear case to really get the indexes to drop huge, specifically S&P 500 and the NASDAQ. You don't have a lot going for you. Next year could be a different scenario, or a year after that, but for the next several quarters, it's going to be a tough play, in my opinion, for when you're going to have those big dogs like having their net income skyrocket. You're going to see those companies, 50%, 70%, 100%, if not over 100% rises in net income EPS on a year-over-year basis in these future quarters. It's going to be shocking. Chris Patel says here, Palantir. So just to clarify, I'm completely out of Palantir. I sold on the way up, definitely missed some gains, okay? And he sold out of Palantir stock completely, right? And I think a lot of retail investors, or if you hold any of these sorts of companies, right, Palantir, NVIDIA, any of these stocks that are kind of booming right now, right, the AI-related stocks, a lot of people are looking at it like, is this a great time to take some profits? Is there a lot more upside here, and you're going to miss out on a lot of opportunity? And I want to share some thoughts here in regards to Palantir and kind of this space that I think are very important for everybody to kind of understand what's going on here from kind of my stance. So I appreciate everybody joining me as always. Thanks for being subscribed, folks. I appreciate y'all. And so in regards to Palantir specifically, right? You make a move like this, you got to understand you're selling a company like this likely at very early innings in terms of their long-term opportunity here, right? Unless you believe there's nothing in terms of this AI stuff, if you believe this is not real, it's all just hype, companies aren't going to make substantial dollars off this. This isn't a game changer for Palantir. It does nothing for them. If you think that, right, then I understand, cashing out of Palantir. But if you really are of the belief that this is a game-changing opportunity for Palantir for the next, 5, 10, 15 years, and this company was going to grow regardless, but now it's kind of going to have supercharged growth over the next few years, then I think you're ultimately making a pretty large mistake in regards to selling Palantir right now. Because this company, you got to understand, when you got game-changing companies with game-changing products, they go on multi-year runs. And it's not just like it's 1 quarter or 1 year or something like that, okay? So, selling a Palantir here, to sell out of it completely, especially, in my opinion, is a bit of a dangerous move, once again, unless you have the thought process that this is all just hype, there's nothing here. Now, you could have believed that, I think, up until NVIDIA's guidance that they gave, what was that, last week or the week before, when they were supposed to do $7 billion for this upcoming quarter, and now they're talking about doing $11 billion. When you hear something like that, I think that you should start to take this stuff more serious and realize, oh gosh, this is actually for real, right? And this is a great picture. I actually saw somebody post this, right? This is kind of like a famous picture in the retail community of what people think it's like to hold a stock and what it's actually like to hold a stock, right? And in regards to a stock like Palantir, I could understand some retail folks bought this stock in the 20s, bought this stock in the 30s, right? And so they went through a rough ride, all the way down to $6, $7 a share, right? That's vicious, and that happened in a 12 to 18 month span. But at the same time, you have to kind of differentiate between your feelings and what's actually going on with the company's fundamentals. When I look at a company like Palantir, I see a company that fundamentals look like it's going to be exponentially better over the next several years than it's been over the last several years in terms of revenue growth and in terms of, obviously, net income, right? So in regards to Palantir, if you wanted to sell something of the stock, you don't have to sell it all. And I think it's an important subject, we got to talk about. You don't have to sell all of a stock. Like, let's say you're looking at Palantir and you're like, oh man, it's ran a lot. I don't know, like, I'm having trouble figuring out what their future valuation is or if it's overvalued or whatnot. I think I want to take some chips off the table. So if you look at, like myself, I have 4,855 shares of Palantir in the public account, for instance, right? If I was of that thought process, which, by the way, well, I'll address that in a moment. If I was of that thought process, I could sell 1,000 shares, I could sell 2,000 shares, something like that. I could sell shares as it goes up. So maybe I could sell like 500 shares at 15 and another 500 shares at 16 and another 500 shares at 17 if I was of that thought process, right? It's not like you got to cash out. A lot of times people think like you got to cash out all your stock, and it's like you don't have to do that. You don't have to do that, right? You have to be really convinced that this baby's going down massively, right? Now, secondly, am I personally interested in cashing any of my Palantir shares I hold? And the answer to that is absolutely not. This is so early innings here, it doesn't even remotely interest me to cash out a Palantir stock right now. Okay, that's just my personal view on this. It's not something that interests me at all. What I look at with Palantir specifically is I look at a story here in which analysts have been growing revenue 12% this coming quarter, right? 16% the following quarter, 17% the following quarter, 18% the following quarter. I mean, based upon those NVIDIA numbers, based upon Karp's commentary about, basically interest in their product is unprecedented like he's ever seen, right? I mean, I'm going to go out there on a limb and say Palantir is going to have destroy these numbers. And I mean, absolutely obliterate them in terms of revenue growth for, who knows how many quarters in the future, but probably a lot of quarters. Because when we get a big technology shift, it's not like it's just a 1 quarter thing. Like, this is something that lasts likely for years to go in the future, right? And we know in regards to Palantir, very sticky product that honestly, I think once people sign up for it, they're likely going to stay signed up for it. And I don't think if a big company signs on with Palantir, they're going to ditch the product. I mean, usually their contracts are for many years, big dollar amounts, and I just think Palantir, everything I've looked into the company, I think the product is so great that it's hard for me to fathom like a big company signing up for them and then ditching them. So what this is going to add up to is likely Palantir in a situation where they're going to destroy these numbers, and likely they're going to beat every analyst's expectation for the next several years in terms of what analysts were expecting in terms of the revenue side, right? Now, obviously, if that's the situation, then likely earnings per share could come in a lot better as well, right? At the end of the day, if Palantir comes in with 20% revenue growth next quarter, 30% revenue growth, 40% revenue growth, I mean, that can completely change your EPS expectations around the company. The EPS could be far better in that situation, and that changes like how you even think about value in the company from the earnings per share side when you're looking at forward Ps, when you're thinking about future profitability. This is something very important to keep in mind, right? It is a little frustrating, she talks about all these AI related companies and to not really give, Palantir some airtime there, right? When you really have that opportunity and you could go in depth on, what Palantir's doing and, why their product's a game changer and why, all these Fortune 500 companies are going to have to consider signing up for Palantir over this, next few years. I just think that was a great opportunity, and to just like talk about some of those other stocks she talked about. I'm just like, what are you doing, man? And so, as always, leave a little bit frustrated with Miss Cathie Wood.